The pain hit at 11:17 p.m. 1 second, I was reviewing patient charts in the ICU break room. The next, I was on the floor, chest crushed by an invisible weight. 23 minutes later, I woke up with knowledge that's kept me awake every night since. Jesus showed me 7 American cities that will become mass graves before autumn 2026. I'm a cardiac nurse. I understand how the body fails. But what I saw wasn't about heart stopping. It was about time running out. The first city falls in 41 days. And I need to tell you which ones before it's too late. My name is Rebecca Torres. I'm 34 years old. For the past 9 years, I've worked critical care at Mercy General Hospital in Dallas. I've watched hundreds of people die. I know what the body does when the heart stops. The color drains from the fingertips first. The pupils fix and dilate. The monitor flatlines with a sound that never leaves you. I never thought I'd hear that sound for myself. February 17th was a double shift. 12 hours turned into 16. I was alone in the break room at 11:15 p.m., scanning discharge notes for a transplant patient. The coffee had gone cold an hour earlier. I remember noticing the clock above the medication fridge. 11:17. Then the pressure. It started behind my sternum, like someone was tightening a steel band around my ribcage. My left arm went numb. The pen I was holding clattered onto the table. I tried to call for help, but my throat wouldn't work. The fluorescent lights above me started to dim, tunneling into a pinpoint of white. I slid off the chair. My cheek hit the cold linoleum. Then silence. Not the silence of an empty room. The silence of being erased. I expected darkness. I expected nothing. What I got was the opposite of nothing. One moment, I was staring at the gray floor tiles, tasting copper in my mouth. The next, I was standing on ground that looked like condensed light. It wasn't glowing. It was solid somehow, but made entirely of brightness. I looked down at my hands. I was still wearing my scrubs. The ID badge was still clipped to my pocket. Rebecca Torres, RN. But the exhaustion that lived in my bones was gone. I looked up, and that's when I saw him standing 20 feet away. But what he said first wasn't what I expected. "Rebecca," he said. His voice didn't come from his mouth. It came from everywhere at once, like the air itself was speaking. "You've spent your career keeping hearts beating. Now I need you to save lives a different way." I should have been terrified, but standing there, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Clarity. He moved his hand, and the landscape around us dissolved. We were suddenly suspended above North America. I could see it all. The cities glowing like clusters of stars. The highways like veins. And then I saw something else. A dark shimmer over certain places. Like heat waves, but cold. Wrong. 7 cities, he said. 7 warnings. The first happens in 41 days. The continent below us rushed forward. I felt like I was falling, but I wasn't scared. We stopped above the Pacific Northwest. I recognized the Space Needle immediately. Seattle. The Puget Sound spread out like dark glass. April 22nd, he said. Watch the ocean. I saw the date burn into my mind, like someone had carved it there. Then the vision changed. The ground started moving, not shaking, rolling. I watched the earth ripple like fabric being snapped tight. Buildings in downtown Seattle swayed, their glass facades shattering floor by floor. I heard the sound, a deep grinding roar that came from below the world. Cascadia subduction zone, he said, and somehow I understood. Magnitude 9.1. 31 aftershocks above 6.0. Then the ocean moved. The water pulled back from the coastline, miles back. I saw the dark seabed exposed, slick and alien. People walked out onto it, confused, curious. They had 19 minutes. The wave that came back wasn't a wave. It was a wall, 60 feet high. It carried cars, shipping containers, pieces of houses. It hit the coast moving faster than any human could run. I watched it erase neighborhoods in seconds. The ports collapsed. The bridges snapped. 17,000 dead in the first hour, he said quietly. The water doesn't stop at the shore. It pushes 3 miles inland. I felt tears on my face. Why are you showing me this? Because you're going to tell them to leave. Now. Not when the tremors start. Now. Before I could respond, we moved again. South, down the coastline. Los Angeles sprawled below us, a massive grid of light stretching from the mountains to the sea. But the shimmer over it was darker, thicker. The second city, he said, May 8th. And what I saw next made Seattle look like a warning shot. The San Andreas Fault appeared below us like a scar across California. I could see it glowing, pulsing with pressure that had been building for decades. May 8th, 2:47 a.m., he said. The rupture starts near the Salton Sea and travels north at 2 miles per second. I watched the earth split open, a crack that ran for 300 miles. The shaking lasted 4 minutes. 4 minutes of the ground moving like ocean waves. I saw the 405 freeway buckle and collapse. Overpasses pancaked onto the cars below. But the earthquake was just the beginning. Gas lines ruptured across the city. Sparks from downed power lines ignited them. Within 20 minutes, I counted over 200 separate fires. The water mains were severed. There was nothing to fight the flames with. The aqueducts from the north break in 16 places, he explained. Los Angeles loses its water supply completely. 11 million people, no water, fires burning. Her roads destroyed. I saw people trapped on rooftops, surrounded by flames and rubble. I saw the 101 jammed with cars that couldn't move because the pavement had split into jagged sections. The morning sun rose over a city that looked like a war zone. 3 days, he said. That's how long before neighbor turns on neighbor for a bottle of water. The civilization you trust is 3 days deep. How many? I couldn't finish the question. 42,000 in the first week, more after, when the supply chains collapse. He moved his hand again. We shot east, across the desert, across the plains. The Mississippi River appeared below us, snaking through the heartland. The third city isn't a city, he said. It's a region, May 30th. I saw the center of the country, Memphis, St. Louis, Little Rock, the new Madrid seismic zone. I'd heard about it in nursing school during disaster preparedness training, a fault line that most people forget exists. Magnitude 8.4, he said. The Mississippi runs backward for 6 hours. I watched the river stop flowing, then reverse. The water churned and frothed, flooding north instead of south. Bridges that had stood for 80 years twisted and fell. I saw the I-55 bridge at Memphis drop into the churning water like a broken spine. But worse than the destruction was what it meant. The eastern half of America is cut off from the western half, he said. The trucks stop moving. The trains stop running. The fuel pipelines snap. The grocery stores empty in 18 hours. I saw the cascading failures. Power grids going dark. Hospitals running out of diesel for their generators. Pharmacies with no way to get medications. Then he turned to me, with eyes that held an impossible sadness. The fourth city is where it gets worse. Phoenix, June 19th. What he showed me next involved something I'd never considered. Phoenix sat in the desert like a mirage. From above, I could see how impossible it was. A city of 5 million people in a place that should only support thousands. The Colorado River, already thin as a thread, was the only thing keeping it alive. June 19th, he said. The hottest day in recorded history, 127 degrees. I watched the temperature climb, but it wasn't just heat. The power grid, already strained by millions of air conditioners running at full capacity, started to fail. One substation overloaded, then another. Then the cascading blackouts began. Without electricity, there's no air conditioning, he said. Without air conditioning, the heat kills in hours, not days. I saw people fleeing their homes, trying to get to cooling centers that didn't have power either. The highways out of the city turned into parking lots. Cars overheated and died in the gridlock. I watched families abandon their vehicles and try to walk, but there was nowhere to walk to. Just miles of desert in 127-degree heat. The water pumps stop working, he continued. The reservoirs are already at 18% capacity. When the pumps die, the city has 11 hours of water left in the towers. I saw hospitals trying to operate without power or water. Dialysis patients dying because the machines wouldn't run. Nursing homes where the elderly were cooking in their beds. 63,000 dead in the first 72 hours, he said, most from hyperthermia. The rest from dehydration. The vision shifted before I could process the horror. We were over the Atlantic now. I saw the eastern seaboard lit up like a Christmas display. Then we descended toward Florida. Miami's skyline rose from the ocean, all glass and steel and pride. The fifth city, he said, July 23rd. I noticed something immediately. The ocean was higher than it should be. Not by much. Just a few feet, but enough. Storm surge from Hurricane Diana, he explained. Category 4. But the storm isn't the problem. I watched the water rise. It didn't crash in like a tsunami. It just kept rising, inch by inch, relentless. But the real nightmare was what happened underground. The limestone foundation beneath Miami is porous, full of holes like Swiss cheese. I watched the ocean pressure force seawater up through the ground itself. It bubbled up through storm drains, through basement floors, through the foundations of high-rises. The buildings aren't anchored to bedrock, he said. They're anchored to limestone that's dissolving. I saw a 40-story condominium on Collins Avenue begin to tilt. Not collapse. Tilt. Like it was sinking into quicksand. People were screaming from balconies as the building slowly leaned toward the ocean. The entire southern tip of Florida becomes uninhabitable, he said. The salt water contaminates the aquifer. Even if they rebuild, there's no fresh water. Then his voice dropped to barely a whisper. But the sixth city, that one's personal for you, Rebecca. My stomach dropped as we started moving north. Toward Texas, Dallas appeared below us. My city, the highways I drove every day, the hospital where I'd worked for 9 years, the apartment complex where my sister lived with her 2 kids. August 14th, he said. I felt my chest tighten. No, please, not here. The sixth city falls to what humans created, not what the earth produces. I watched the power grid, the same grid that powered every hospital, every traffic light, every refrigerator in North Texas. It looked fragile from this height, delicate threads of connection spanning hundreds of miles. 3 transformer substations, he said. Simultaneous failure during peak demand. Heat index of 116 degrees. The lights went out across the Metroplex. 7 million people. No power, no water pumps, no refrigeration. In August. I saw Mercy General, my hospital, switch to backup generators. But the generators only had fuel for 72 hours. I watched the ICU where I'd worked. Patients on ventilators. Dialysis machines going silent. The pharmacy's insulin spoiling in warming refrigerators. The supply trucks can't get through, he said. The traffic signals are dead. The intersections become war zones. The stores are emptied in 4 hours. I saw my neighborhood, people I knew, my sister carrying her kids through 116-degree heat, trying to reach somewhere, anywhere with power. But there was nowhere. 11 days, he said quietly. That's how long before the National Guard restores partial power. By then, 28,000 are dead. Mostly elderly, mostly poor. Mostly those who trusted the grid would never fail. Tears were streaming down my face. Why are you showing me this? What am I supposed to do? Tell them to leave before summer. Tell your sister. Tell everyone you love. The grid is more fragile than they know. Before I could respond, we moved one final time. We shot north, fast. The landscape blurred until we stopped above New York City. Manhattan rose from the water like a fortress of steel and ambition. The seventh city, he said. September 6th. The last warning before everything changes. I saw the Atlantic surge. Not from a hurricane, from something deeper. A shift in the ocean floor, east of the continental shelf. The water rose 12 feet in 40 minutes. Lower Manhattan flooded. But the real death trap was below ground. The subway system, I whispered. 400 miles of tunnels, he confirmed. Rush hour. 600,000 people underground when the water hits. I watched the seawater pour down the subway entrances like waterfalls. The tunnels filled in minutes. The trains stopped. The lights went out. I heard the screaming, even though I knew this was just a vision. The financial center of the world, he said, gone in one morning. Then he turned to face me directly. Rebecca, what comes after September 6th is worse than all 7 cities combined. The vision of New York faded. We were back in that place of impossible light, but the weight of what I'd seen was crushing me. Why? I asked. Why let this happen? The earth groans under the weight of rebellion, he said. These aren't punishments, Rebecca. They're consequences. The foundations were always unstable. The systems were always temporary. People just forgot they were built on sand. He gestured, and a new vision appeared. Not of destruction, of refuge. I saw the northern plains, Montana, Wyoming, the Dakotas, small communities scattered across vast spaces, people growing food, collecting rainwater, solar panels on roofs, root cellars full of preserved goods. These are the ones who heard the warnings early, he said. They left the cities in spring, before the first disaster. They thought they were being cautious. They don't know yet that they're being saved. How do people survive? I asked. After the cities fall, after the grid collapses, how does anyone make it? Not everyone will, he said simply. But I'm preparing remnants, communities in high ground, away from the coasts, away from the fault lines, away from dependence on systems that are about to fail. He showed me lists forming in my mind, not written, just known. Water filtration. You can't trust the municipal supply after the disasters. Solar power. The grid won't return for months in some places, years in others. Heirloom seeds. The supply chains break in June. If you can't grow food, you can't eat. Medical supplies, insulin, blood pressure medication, antibiotics. The pharmacies empty after New Madrid. Hand tools. When the fuel runs out, everything becomes manual again. And one more thing, he said. His voice turned sharp. Warning. I saw a vision of October, after all 7 cities had fallen, the nation in chaos. Then I saw them, leaders on screens, calm voices promising order, safety, a solution, a digital system, biometric identification. They called it the Recovery Registry. Scan your hand. Get access to food distribution, medical care, fuel rations. This is the lie that comes after the truth, he said. The mark that separates my people from those who choose the system over the Creator. Rebecca, anyone who takes this mark will lose the ability to hear my voice. They will trade temporary safety for eternal separation. I felt cold despite the warmth of that place. When do I go back? I whispered. Now, he said. And suddenly, I was staring at white ceiling tiles. Someone was doing chest compressions. I heard the monitor beeping, erratic at first, then steady. We've got a rhythm, someone shouted. My colleague, Dr. Patel, was standing over me, hands still on my sternum. Rebecca, can you hear me? I tried to speak, but my throat was raw. 23 minutes. I'd been gone 23 minutes, but I came back with a mission. They kept me in the hospital for observation for 3 days. Ran every cardiac test available, found nothing. My heart was completely normal. No blockages, no arrhythmias, no explanation for why I collapsed. But I knew what happened. That was 11 days ago. April 22nd is in 30 days. Seattle has 30 days. I've already called my sister. She thought I was crazy at first, But yesterday, she put her house on the market. She's moving to Montana next week with the kids. I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm just telling you what I saw. If you're watching this from Seattle, Los Angeles, Phoenix, Miami, Dallas, New York, or anywhere near the new Madrid Zone, you need to understand something. The countdown has already started. I've spent the last week studying geological surveys, seismic activity reports, ocean temperature patterns, and everything is lining up exactly as he showed me, which means the vision I haven't told you about yet, the one he showed me for October, the one about what happens to people who stay in the cities after September. That one's coming true too. Comment below what city you're in right now. I need to know who I'm praying for, because in 30 days, everything I've said will either prove me a liar or prove that time just ran out.